Hello and welcome back to my channel. This is Tracy with Artful Creations by Tracy. If you saw my video from last month, it was a reveal on the Mintay papers that I purchased from 7 Kids Creates. They are absolutely divine and beautiful, and I really could not wait to make a paper bag album using these beautiful papers. I start out with 4 paper bags that measure 12 1/4 inch by 6 inches that I sew 4 together with a zigzag stitch. As I flip through the bag, you will see that there are openings and flaps from the bottom of the bag, and it's important to rotate them so that they are on different sides of the album. It makes a perfect 6x6 album. I have chosen the papers that I'd like to use for my front and back. That is where I always begin my albums. After I choose my front and my back, then I'm going to look through all the papers so that I can lay them out in my album. For this particular paperback, I found it... Did I say back? Pack. Anyway, I found it so difficult to choose which side to use. I do end up making 2 albums, as you'll see in the end, just so that I could utilize both sides. These papers also come with these great embellishments to cut out and use, which I will be doing. Now, the first step in the process, like I said, is to adhere those front and back papers onto the album. You will need to punch holes in the entire album. And the reason for doing this first is that it gets way too bulky and once the papers are all adhered down, and I'll show you that a little bit later. I have this wonderful crocodile tool that I use. It's perfect for the job, and since I have been making quite a lot of albums, I have already marked on my ruler where to place the bag and punch the holes. Now I want to show you that I cut out paper using my Cricut machine for that color cardstock. I created a 5.75 inch basic square shape and cut out 2. I manipulated the squares so that they cut in opposite corners, giving me 2 5 1/4 inch squares, and then the other 2 pages end up being 6 inches. All I need to do is cut off those little pieces. Now each album has 16 pages inside that need to be covered. I will lay out each page, deciding where to place the paper. I want to make sure that I spread out the designs and the solid colors. I also decide which pieces will be cut for my inside pockets, and I will share with you the first page and using a pencil to mark off that area that I will cut off. Now the great thing about using a 6x6 paper pack for a paper bag album is there is very, very little waste. I'm just going to finish up here placing my pieces of paper, and then we'll get right into the next process. All right, so like I said, I am just going to use my pencil to mark off the area in which I am going to cut. That is it, real easy. And then you're going to take that smaller piece of paper and glue that down to the bottom that's going to be underneath the flap. And here I am struggling with, okay, that's a really pretty side. I really want to use that side. I keep flipping and deciding and flipping and deciding. So ultimately I'm going to use the pretty side for that underneath the pocket and then the pattern for the top pocket. After you glue both these down, it's important to then glue the sides of the bag to create that pocket. Real easy process here. Once you glue those down, and then we're going to glue the second page down. I'm using art glitter glue here, and I will struggle with it coming up on that brown piece of paper. I eventually do get it unclogged, but it does take me some time. Using that very thin, precise tip gets clogged very often, especially when you use it every single day like I do. But it is amazing. I really love that glue. I would also like to give that Barely Art glue a try, so I might be ordering that soon. Now, I should say, you're going to notice that we are covering up those holes. Let's not panic here because we will be punching out those holes again with our crocodile. It's important to do this after you glue the 2 pages on. Otherwise, you will lose those holes and not know where they are to punch out in the end. I finished gluing down the rest of the papers offline. And, oh, I should also mention that after you After every 2 pages, you should do this process. Punch out the holes. It's very important to do that. But anyway, I'm going to do the rest off camera, and now flip through so you could see my little pages in the pockets and just how cute that is. We're going to go on to the embellishments. Oh, I forgot a pocket there. Let's glue that down really quick. Now, the elements that came with the paper, they're really adorable. There's some deers, owls, sleighs. They're just so very pretty. And we have the 4 larger ones, and I decided that those will fit perfect on my 4 pockets. And that's what I'm doing. I'm just laying them out, and then I'm going to actually bring in the foam tape, and I'm going to foam tape those onto each of those pockets. For the little guys, remember those additional 6-inch pieces of solid cardstock? We're going to use them to create the pullouts for our 4 pockets, but there will be extra to mount the embellishments on. As you see, I have one cut out already, and the pockets need to be approximately 5 inches by 2.75 inches. Now, not all the bags are made perfect, so that means that you should get an exact measurement for your pocket just to be sure. And I'm going to use that leftover to use as a mat for those embellishments. I just eyeball it, I'll glue them down, and then I will cut them to give them a nice little border. Now, I found that these papers and colors couldn't have worked out better. I do the rest of the matting off camera, and I was able to use up every bit of those scraps that I cut. The only thing that I had left was those 4 strips. And I could have used those 4 strips for something else. And if they were pattern paper, I might have, but I decide that I'm going to use ribbon, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. So here we are. We have those pieces all matted, ready to go. And you will see those strips that I'm going to show you that I had left over. That's them. That's all I had left. Now for the inside pockets. Those are going to be pullouts, and they're perfect. All I need to do is trim them off a little bit. Here I'm pointing out that one imperfected pocket, and you'll see that the paper is crooked, and I will just have to go in there and trim that so it fits. You'll see in the end that I forgot to do that after I finished my album. All right. Now, we will be using ribbon. Let's not forget about the ribbon. However, that's not the ribbon I'm going to use. But before we get to that point, I want to point out that the album, here it is, all filled with our embellishments and pages, and I'm going to show you just how difficult it would be to get that album inside that crocodile. That's why it's super important to get those holes punched right away. It's just way, way too thick. Now, I have done these albums differently in the past, so this seemed to work out the best. For the ribbon, you can choose any 4 ribbons that you like. I typically choose 4 different ribbons. I cut them at 9 inches in length, and then I pair them up. I also showed you little tiny ribbons. Those were 3 inches, and those are going to be for our pullouts. For the ribbons, I partner them up, and then I pinch the holes, or I should say I pinch the ends together to put through the holes, and I use my tweezers to help guide them because the holes don't match up perfectly. They're a little bit off just because nothing's going to be perfect on a paper bag album. And as I feed them through, I'm going to make sure that they end up matching so that they're kind of even there, fluff them out a little bit. These are sheer ribbons, and they are just a little bit more difficult to work with than if they were fabric type ribbon, or I don't even know what ribbon is actually made of. There's probably so many different materials. But in any event, once you feed all the ribbon through, then what I do is make sure that there's a different color showing on each of the binding. That way your top ribbon, once you tie them, is going to be a different color. Now, if you want to use all the same color ribbon, that's perfectly fine. You don't have to do it this way. make the album your own, by all means. You can use 2 different ribbon, whatever you'd like. So I'm just going to now just twist them around, make sure, like I said, that a different color is on top, because that is my preference. And when you're tying these ribbons, you're going to use a basic square knot to tie them. You want to make sure it's not too tight, because you want your album to open freely once your ribbons are tied. You can always loosen them if you've made them too tight. And once the type of knot you're making is just going to be a basic square knot. Right over left, left over right. Real easy. You're going to tie the first one and then the second one right on top of it. And you're going to just do this for all the ribbons. Once they are all tied, I just fluff them out a little bit. Make sure that they're all kind of have a nice showing, as you see there. And then you're going to want to open your album. Make sure it opens nicely. Kind of bend that spine a little bit. Give it a little bit of that, what they call memory. So when you're opening it, once you start filling it, it'll open nicely. And you see, I forgot to do that one piece of paper. So here I am bending it, showing you. Just make sure. I think the ribbons turned out fine. They nice and loose, not too tight, not too loose. Now, don't forget to singe the edges of these ribbons, because it's important. Otherwise, they will fray. And you really don't notice any black or anything like that on the ribbons once they're singed. Now, our last process is to make the little pull tabs on our pullouts. And as you see, I did not trim that down. So I had to go ahead and trim all those down about, I think it was a 1/4 inch. And once I am done with that, I'm going to line up my papers, because whether you use ribbon or whether you're going to use pattern paper or even solid paper, I've used them all for my pull-out tabs. I am going to use a stapler to staple them down. But the important thing is that you want to alternate those pull-out tabs so that they're like in a stair step. You want them to look presentable. It helps them to look presentable when they're in the album, and then they're easier to grab and know where they're at. So I just line them up, making sure that they are alternated, or not really alternated, but stair-stepped. I guess I would call it stair-stepping, because you see there, it's just a really nice presentation. So anyway, I really hope you have enjoyed this paper bag album. Join me tomorrow, because I'll be bringing you another paper bag album I created for the design team, tailor-made cards for you, using her special delivery Christmas. If you like this video, I'd love it if you give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed, I would love it if you would subscribe. And always have a very blessed day. I will bring in the pictures from the albums that I made with both the albums that I made with this beautiful paper. Oh, one last thing. I also did add some very pretty sticker embellishments, sticker gems to all those embellishments. I think it really turned out great. Thanks. Bye.